Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new season, which is season 2 of the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show. My name is Steve Van Plu. Today, we have a gentleman who has a saddle shop in Texas. He has a YouTube channel. He has a leather podcast show, and he also is a champion for leathercraft education in the leathercraft community. It is none other than the one and only Don Gonzalez. Don, thanks for coming on the show.
How's it going, Steve? Glad to have you in my shop, man. You brought tons of equipment.
Tons. There's lots. And
you run a little higher end than I do when it comes to equipment, but it's really neat. It was neat watching you set all this up.
I had to beat the heat too, so good thing you got some AC.
Nice
because,
and hot here.
Oof, boy. Yeah. Let's get into it. Let's start. There are a lot of people that probably know your story, but let's put your story into one solid response in one video right here on this show. How did you get started in leathercraft and at a young age, and then where did it grow from there into how did you end up getting a business?
Well, when I was a young man, I guess, young child, growing up, we were rodeoing in youth rodeos and things like that. And I roped calves with a boy that became a real good friend of mine, still friends with him today, been a lifelong friend. As we got started, we just rode junk. Everybody rode junk when you grew up. Your dad would buy whatever saddle he could find, this and that. And you always had something that you broke or whatever. And my dad was always kind of a tinkerer. So, hey, we can fix that. We can build that. So we ended up kind of trying our hand at leather work just to repair gear here and there because there really wasn't any saddle shops where we were along the coast that we knew of anyway. And I went to this friend of mine's house one weekend to rope, and when we went over there, his dad had an entire leather shop in his barn. And so we walked in there, and I was like, man, this is really neat. And of course, I was into all kinds of building things and art and stuff like that. And it was just full of tools and sides of leather, not tons, because he just did it as a hobby, but there was a lot of like leather around and tools and things I'd never seen. And of course, that evening, he's showing me some stuff, and me and my friend were in there messing around and stuff, and that's kind of what got my first start. That next Christmas, my dad ended up, I guess he talked to my friend's dad, and he was like, get him this thing from Tandy and this and that. And so he ended up getting my first leather kit for Christmas, and I think it was the big one. Tandy used to have one that was like a real big one, and it came with like 3 or 4 projects in there, and I can remember that Christmas weekend, I made everything in that box. It was 4 items, but I had never really made a whole lot. It was a belt and a key fob and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so we made all that, and then it just kind of went from there. Like I was always dabbling, making knife sheaths, making little baby powder bags to tie on your saddle, and it was all like we all are when we start. It's just you're just learning the material, learning kind of what to do.
Yep.
And so that's what I was kind of focused on, was just trying to make whatever I could. If it got into real heavy repair, obviously, by that time we'd found somebody here or there that could do stuff. And so I would kind of get it fixed and then learn. So stirrup leathers I learned early on, stuff like that through high school and into college. And so that just kind of stuck with me. We always had I ended up taking a stall in the barn and just putting a floor in it and walling it in, and I made that my leather shop. And you thought this shop was hot in the very back. That thing was miserable on the coast in the summertime. But I'd sit in there and tinker and learn stuff. And then when I went to college, a friend of mine there I'd met wanted, my first year, I went to a small community college. He wanted a knife sheath for a little pocket knife. So I went home that weekend to see the folks and stuff, and got out in that little shop and made him a knife sheath right quick. To me it wasn't, it was just a fun little project just for a buddy. Get back up there and I handed it to him. And when I handed it to him, there was another guy standing there that I had only briefly met. And he said, "Did you make that?" And I said, "Yeah, I made it when I went home, or whatever." And he said, "How much do you want for those?" And I just popped off a number. I don't remember, $20 or something, I didn't think the guy'd buy one, And he handed me like a $50 bill and he said, "Make me 2 of them next time you go home." And that was one of the first times I ever got paid. And when you're in college, $50 is a lot of money.
The light bulb turned on.
So I was like, hey, that's pretty cool. So when I went home, I made those 2 knife sheaths, but I also gathered up all my stuff and took it with me to college. And so I ended up doing saddle repair for buddies and people I knew and stuff in my apartment. And so it was it was kind of comical, really. I built a little makeshift bench, but my bed was my cut table. Stored the leather under my bed. We're always in there whooping on stuff, and making stuff. And we'd come home, and there might be a saddle at the front door of the apartment with just a note on it with a buddy's phone number or whatever to put stirrup leathers in or stuff. So that's kind of how I got started. And then it just progressed through college. I went to Texas A&M University I was headed for vet school. That's what I wanted to do. So I was studying and doing stuff, but I still had my little shop. And so then it progressed from my apartment to an extra bedroom in my house. And then I ended up building a little building and swapped a guy a pair of leggings. He helped me build this little 8x16, I think, little portable building. and it just kind of kept going.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I got started as far as the early days.
And then did you do an apprenticeship with a saddle maker after
Yes.
college?
Yeah. So when I got to A&M, it's you're driving around, you're learning the area, and I ended up stumbling on a saddle shop that was right on the edge of Bryan. And so I stopped in there, met the gentleman that owned it. His name was Jimmy Plant. Just a really neat guy. Got to visiting with him and stuff. And so I kind of, over time, I would just, if I wasn't in class, you're got 3 hours to your next class or lab or whatever you're in. And so I'd run over there and just hang out and just kind of walk around and kind of watch. Over time, he kind of brought me back. Let me, come back here and you can check out the saddle I'm building or whatever. He was really the first real saddle maker I had ever met. I had met people that did repair and stuff growing up and through the deal, but he was really the first one that I met that had built saddles and did it for a living. And he was an interesting guy. So, there's a lot of guys, college kids that hung out there as far as guys that, would just go in there and shoot the bull with Jimmy because he was an interesting dude.
Yeah.
As I was in there, when I ended up applying to vet school my junior year, I had all the credits and everything, so you can actually apply before you graduate. I had applied and just flat got a no. Right, because I'm not a brainiac, so my grades were borderline at best for vet school, but I thought, what the hell, we'll turn it in, and so I did it and got a flat no. And so then I was like, okay, well, I'll just graduate. So we just finished out. Then when I graduated, I was like, I have to do something because I was on the fence on either applying again, which I planned to, or starting some kind of master's program, something to stay in school, right? I didn't want to go out to the real world yet. So he needed help. And so I went in there and just said, hey, I'll do your repairs. I'll do the custom stuff you don't want to make. And I had done a few contract pieces for him.
Oh.
So I still had my shop this whole time.
Yeah.
And so occasionally I'd go in there to hang out with him. He's like, hey, you want to build this organizer? Most people listening to this podcast don't know what organizer is, but they used to be, you would buy them, and that's where you had all your calendar and all your stuff. And they were a popular leather item.
They were small, too.
Yeah, they were small, and had a little binder in there, and you could put your sheets and your address book and all that stuff. And he didn't like building that stuff, but he had somebody order, you want to build that? Sure. You want to build this belt? I don't want to do it. Yes. And he'd pay me, and I'd build them. And so I said, man, I need to do something because it was going to be another year, I guess, and if I did get into vet school before I could actually start, I think, if I remember correctly, it's been a long time. But anyway, he was like, sure, come in, I'll pay you contract to do repairs and stuff. That's when I really learned proper repair from his standpoint. Like,
Got it.
He really taught me kind of how to do repair stuff, and I got to work on a lot of saddles. I was just doing it on a contract level as contract labor, and we kept doing that. And I don't remember the exact time frame, but I did it for quite a while and got to where I was building his leggings. He taught me how to build those. Taught me how to build belts and all those kind of items. And he was also working with me on my tooling. And then I kind of started questioning him and just adding little bits and dabs here and there, like, hey, would you teach me to build a saddle? Because I'm watching him build saddles all day. He's building, he showed me stuff. And I preface all that with, we had built a relationship first. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
I'd known him for a little while then, and we were kind of becoming buddies, so he felt real open. He was real open to share.
Yep.
Very, very helpful. And so I kind of said, hey, would you teach me? And he's like, well, we're busy and blah, blah, blah. So finally I nailed him down after a lot of talking and stuff. I said, look, I'll buy all the materials. And at the time, Bowden Saddle Tree Company sold a kit. And it really wasn't a kit. It was, I don't know if they still do or not, but it was 2 sides of leather, your latigos, a tree, your 10 strainer, your hardware, like they sold everything in one box, basically.
Yeah.
Nothing was cut out for you. No patterns, no nothing. It was just all the material.
Yep.
I said, if I buy that, will you help me? And he said, yes, I'll help you. If we can fit it in, evenings, maybe a Saturday here and there, whatever. So I scrounged up enough cash and bought this kit, got it in. And like I said, again, it's not a kit. It was just all the material. And we kind of started. And he helped me cut stuff out. We'd piddle here and there as I had time and this and that. And I don't remember how long it took me to build the saddle. But it took, because I told him I wanted to tool it. And I was doing some tooling for him.
All right.
And I had been tooling since I first started leatherwork. I was very focused on the floral carving. That really interested me. And I grew up drawing, so I was gravitated towards that. So I was doing some tooling for him. I said, I want to fully tool this saddle. He said, I think we should do a rough out. Like, this is your first saddle. I don't want you to focus on that. I said, I really want to tool it. And so he helped me, and he'd say, all right, we got this part fit. Now go spend 6 or 8 hours tooling that piece, and that's what it would take. So that's why it took so long, because I had to ball off and build a fully tooled saddle.
Yep.
So we do that, and it went great. I made mistakes. It's not without mistakes. You saw it. It's out in the retail floor,
Sure
saddle
is.
number 1. I learned a lot through that saddle. It was a Wade with a number 4 Texas dowling horn in it. And, high back, it's got round skirts on it, flat plate rigging, South Texas cowboy, never seen something like that. So I didn't know really what I was building. I just knew it looked cool. Get it all done. And when we got it done, he gave me his critiques on it and stuff. And he just so happened to have an order on his list for that same exact saddle, just not as heavily tooled. Same skirt, same rigging, same everything, same tree. And he said, here's your order form. I'll let you build this one if you want to, and I'll pay you contract wages to build it. And I said, oh, righty. So he was right there, so he would help me, and I built that one. And then that's what happened is he kind of, I don't know if it was an official apprenticeship, but I worked with him then, and I don't remember how many I built with him. I hate to say a number because I can't remember exactly how many it was, but I was there for at least over a year and a half after the point of my first saddle.
Yeah.
And I built a number of saddles alongside with him, and he would kind of make sure they looked the way he wanted them to look for the customers. And then he would also let me take an order occasionally on ones he didn't want to add to his list. And so I was kind of building. By the time we separated by meaning I bought the shop from him, I was building 2 days a week at home, and then I worked for him 3 days a week. So I had a little shop at my house this whole time too. And so I'd get an order here or there. And so I started building, and then of course I'd lug it up to the shop because I ran into a problem, and he'd have to help me, walk me through. He'd say, why don't you just build them here? And I'm like, I work on your time on your stuff, and I'll work at home with mine, just keep it fair, or, it felt better that way. But it always ended up back up there with him helping me because I'd run into some kind of problem. But, yeah.
It's like you had an apprenticeship and freelance work fused into one.
Kind of, yeah. And it was really nice of him to do that because he didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
And that's what I looked at as being very, very blessed and thankful that he did that for me, because he could have just said, you can spend your time here and I'll teach you all you want to learn, but I'm not paying you.
Yeah.
Which is, I still would have done it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I went to College Station broke. It was not on my mind or worry to go home broke. I just wanted to learn how to build saddles.
Yep.
But then during that time, I never applied to vet school that second time.
What were some of the difficult lessons that Jimmy taught you that you walked away, you're like, man, you felt like your tail was between your legs when you walked out of those shops some days?
Some of it was mainly fitting parts, like fitting the cutting the ears and things. And now that I've had 20 years in my shop, I do things completely different than the way he did them, but that's an evolutionary thing. As you build, you learn how you want it done.
Yep.
But there's still a lot of influence and aspects of what he did that I still incorporate into my work. But like when we would be cutting ears or fitting a seat, I could never get that in my mind. I can remember in particular when I'm talking about lugging a saddle up to the shop to have him help me. That was one I had fit 2 seats in, and I couldn't get the ear cuts right.
Oh, no.
And one of them was bad. Like, you might as well just cut it up into coasters. The other one was close and maybe could have made it work. But, like, he always, his deal was, like, let's just make it right. Like, it's just leather. He said it all the time, and I carry that forward in my shop. It's leather. Cows die every day. You learned from this, so it's not a waste of leather because you learned something.
Correct.
But let's do the best job we can. So let's start from scratch, and you're going to learn. This is your 3rd set of ears on this saddle. You're going to learn something. And so that was his biggest deal, was he would always try to show you that if you're going to learn something, sometimes you learn the best when it was painful. Mm-hmm. So when you did something and you're like, man, I really screwed that up, you're not going to do that again, right? So you're going to learn from that. Yep. When everything goes smoothly, you don't remember those times as well, especially on saddles. Yeah.
Hey, y'all, I want to talk to you about the very first sponsor for the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show, and it is Leather Machine Company. If you are looking to upgrade your workshop or to speed up the process on making items, then look no further than Leather Machine Co. They have various sewing machines of multi-purpose needs, along with leather cutting and splitting machines. Check out their website or give them a call for more information. Now, let's go back to the show. So after you bought the shop from Jimmy, now you've worked in there for many years, like you were just saying.
Yeah, I'd say maybe 2 to 3 years, maybe. I can't remember the exact time frame. I'm sorry, I should know that better. But it was basically 2 or 3 because I started the shop in 2004 officially is when I took it over.
Gotcha. So from 2004 to now to 2024, let's talk about some of the tough lessons you learned now running a leather business.
Well, now when he stayed with me for, I don't remember how long it was a few months. He stayed with me and taught me how to start the register, close the register, so that account for your accounting, things like just business principles.
Yep.
That I was kind of doing on my own, but not really focused on it as much because I wasn't running transactions daily, right? It was like, you want a saddle, I'll build you a saddle, and you write me a check. It's pretty clear. But when you're running a shop, and he sold tack, he sold inventory, he has a full retail saddle shop kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so he taught me a lot of that stuff, but as far as getting me started. But when you actually take over the reins and you will have the building, you have the insurance, now you got to report the sales tax on you, right? For the business, all those things was something that I didn't foresee. So there was a lot more involved with the saddle shop versus other than just building the saddles. Yeah. And of course he was gone. So now I had to really, which I think by then I had built, again, I'd probably say 5 or 6 with him, maybe 7. I can't remember. I really can't. It may have been closer to 5, but in doing that now he's gone. So I would call him all the time and question, stuff. Yeah. But yeah, once it's all on your shoulders and when it is your shop now officially, it's kind of like, here you go.
Yep.
See how it happens.
So your official title is a saddle maker, and you've built an extremely plethora amount of saddles. Now, what kind of saddle style do you prefer making, and do you typically make in your shop?
Most of we started building ranch saddles for ranch cowboys. Mm-hmm. That's what all our customers were. When I was with Jimmy, I knew these guys. That was a nice thing too, is I worked there. So as we transitioned, a lot of these guys had experience with me because I was doing their repairs or I was building their little items or whatever. Mm-hmm. But mainly ranch cowboys and things. Then as we kind of brought people in, we all roped, and so a lot of our friends and contacts and people we knew, they were team ropers predominantly. We've got some calf ropers that we've made too, but predominantly it was all team roping. And so over time, that's pretty much what our main focus has been as far as our number one saddle that we're, if you want to say, known for, or that people have seen the most of, is going to be team roping saddles. Built a few cutters, built a few, like maybe 4 or 5 barrel saddles, and then still build quite a few ranch saddles. But that was our main thing.
Is there any saddles that you want to build that you haven't built yet?
The one I want to build is going to probably sound really, really on the outside of norm, but I want to build a charro saddle. But I want to build it properly. So I want to do some research and do all that, because they're like anything else. A calf saddle and a team roping saddle aren't that much different, but there are some subtle differences between the two. And so I don't know enough about that style that I know there are subtle differences between the horn shape, tilt, the what's on the saddle itself. There's a lot of things in there. So we've been doing some research, but that's one thing I'd like to build.
What about those silver, beautiful parade saddles?
Yeah.
You ever want to build one of those?
You talking about American parade saddles?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I have not. And I don't want to, because if you're going to do one of those, and a lot of that silver is expensive.
It is.
And I don't want to be responsible for all that silver, in my shop. But I've worked on some, not really super elaborate, but we have cleaned some of them up and things like that. But no, I don't really. I'm not going to say never, but right now I don't have any real interest to do the silver parade saddles, but because they're something you need to study as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about saddle fitting. Mm-hmm. So when you finally start an order that you have on your books, how do you go about getting the measurements from the saddle? Do you go out there and measure the horse, or does the customer give you the measurements?
There's really not an actual measurement, as far as, it's size 12 or he's, a size extra large, or there's really not. There's ideas and kind of, I need this size gullet or this or that. Early on, I learned some of that from Jim, visiting with him and stuff. But then later on in the years, we sure added key people. I had an older guy that worked for me. He was older than us at the time, but a good friend of mine, and he worked for us. He brought a lot into the fitting game for us because he had built. He's a very, very good saddle maker, and knows how to fit and stuff too. But over time, nowadays, I usually don't get any kind of measure. I will fit if somebody wants a fit. I always kind of tell my customers, I'm not a master fitter. And so what we do is we're going to fit that horse. Anybody's going to fit that horse standing in your parking lot. And so what we always did was just put our tree on. We have a standard setup that we use that I feel like works on a big, broad range of horses. If you get to either end of that bell curve on the extremes, you're going to have to make adjustments, but then you also have to evaluate, are those adjustments going to make that saddle now unusable on other horses, which is something you really don't want to do, is create something that's timeless and could last forever for something that only fits this one animal. And if something happens to that animal, now that piece, so what we always try to do, what Jimmy used to call it, was a fluid fit. We want to build something that will stay out of the way of that horse and allow him to perform under saddle.
Yeah.
We don't want to make something that is so refined in its tightness of parameters that now it cannot set on anything else.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I feel very still learning in that mode, I guess, on fitting. And so what I always tell my customers when they do want me to fit something is that we're fitting him standing here in a parking lot. The minute you ride down the pin or, get back into the box, his back is changing. So what I like to do is I like to know out of performance. We're going to build this saddle and we see how it performs.
Yeah.
And if it performs well, we don't have issues, then we know what we're doing, but we need data. So I can't see with him just standing there.
Yep.
So you can look at a tree and we go by that. We go by how the bar angle is, which is the main thing that we're looking at is bar angle. And your tree makers can set you up however you need. But I would say that the vast majority of trees that are built of a high quality, they're built out of the, their normal setup is usually good. And with us having enough saddles out there, usually when a customer comes to me, they either I already have a one or two of my saddles. So they say, I want the same setup we had, which we very rarely change our setup because it does fit that broad spectrum of horses that we encounter down here and the type of performance horses that we're building for. But then also, or we'll have a customer that doesn't have one of my saddles, but has ridden a bunch of them because they bought this horse from a guy that was riding my saddles.
Got it.
So, with ours being mainly in the performance horse industry, focused on team roping, there are a lot of trainers out there making horse, and a lot of them horses we are selecting those through breeding and what we like in a horse and what we need them to do. They're all pretty close.
Yep.
Built wise.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, our second sponsor for the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show is none other than the Leathercrafters Journal. Carrying on a tradition of 68 years of publishing the magazine for leather workers and artists worldwide, they also host 3 trade shows in the United States and 1 in Europe. Give them a call or visit their website and use the promo code COMMUNITY and you will receive an additional free magazine added to your subscription at no charge. The Leathercrafters Journal truly sets the standard with staying up to date on all things leathercraft. If it's about leather, it's in the journal. Now, back to our show. Now, let's change tables and let's talk about self-criticism on our work. Now, after you are done making a saddle, how do you take a step back and criticize your work and educate yourself on like, maybe I can do this better or maybe I can do that? How do you personally go about approaching that situation?
I try not to be too overcritical till I get to the end, but some saddles will fight you the whole way through, and so it's really hard not to. For me, when I get done with one, and I think you and I were visiting about this earlier, I find that if I take pictures, obviously, people follow us on Instagram or any, Facebook or whatever. I like to post a lot of progress pictures of us in the build because it's interesting. But also what I'm doing that for is like when I go home in the evenings or in the mornings, we can look at that. And a lot of times you'll see something in that photograph of your build that you're not seeing when you're sitting in front of it because you've been looking at it all day. And so just taking a simple photo and then coming back to it a couple hours later after dinner or before you drink or while you're drinking coffee in the mornings, you might see that this is just a hair crooked that you can fix it because you're not so far in the build. When a saddle is finished, I do the same thing. But at that point, I'm not really changing something unless it's absolutely wrong, which we shouldn't be that far in if it is absolutely wrong in general. But I look at those and I try to make mental notes of that skirt could be a little bit longer or that housing looks a little off balance. I'm kind of overcritical sometimes on some of the things that I look at on my saddles in particular is I'm picking little bitty things, but it's not something that's going to affect the function of it as much as just something that I'm trying to clean up. I visit with a couple guys that have been in the industry way longer than I have and have built way more than I have. And always questioning them on horns. That's kind of where my mind's been the last year or so, is trying to really get that saddle horn as refined as I can. And there's so many there's like anything else. There's so many little things that you can make better or worse that don't affect the horn's function at all.
Yeah.
But the look of it.
Have you ever broken a tool from building a saddle?
Oh, yeah.
Like something that you were like, man, this was one of my favorite tools. It just broke on me. And
Yeah, I
like,
had a heel pry.
Okay.
And the heel pry is it's a handy little tool for saddles. It's mainly in the boot and equipment, boot and shoe industry.
Mm-hmm.
But for saddles, I would use it to form our Cheyenne rolls. A lot of my saddles have a roll. Mm-hmm. They're not straight up cannels. And you could really fit that in there to get that nice crease up inside there where your stitches are going to be eventually and all that. And I use it for other things as well, using it as a pry to pry things up. And I had it for a long time. And you don't see them for sale all the time.
No,
They're kind of harder to find.
Yes,
they
are.
Still sell them, but it's not at your local leather supply company.
Yep.
And I can remember when I broke that. And I don't remember I was prying something I shouldn't have been prying, but I was prying it and the handle broke off, and I was pretty upset because then I had to find, what am I going to use to get in this spot? Because that one spot, it was the only thing I had at the time that would fit in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we both know that the industry has changed. You've been in it a lot longer than I have,
Mm-hmm.
and you've seen it change, and it has changed. And the big hot topic that a lot of people like to inquire and ask about is apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it almost is a hybrid type question, type ordeal.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to talk a little bit about how do you think an apprenticeship can work in today's age?
That's a big can of worms. It's a big debatable topic, and I visited with a number of guys that ask that same question and have their opinions on that system, because we do not have an apprenticeship program. Mm. We have and I'm saying America, like, you know, I've talked to some guys that have done European apprenticeship, like full on, like I think they call it bureaucracy, like they have a whole system set up.
Yeah.
For apprentice, and it is like 1-2 year apprenticeship. Like you're going through the paces.
Yeah, I think it's a 2 year type
and you
ordeal.
have to get signed off that you are officially. It's just like we have it for plumbers, we have it for electricians, we have it for that.
Yeah.
In the trades.
Yep.
But we do not for saddles. And I'm not saying that's what we need. I'm not saying that more not legislation, but you know what I mean, more rules and things are what we need.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I asked that question, and I've posed that question many times to other saddle makers in private. Like, okay, what do we do for our industry? Where are these guys supposed to go if they really want to learn? And it is hard. And and the problem is a lot of these shops can't afford to have, you know, we interviewed Chuck Storms. That's what he said. They can't afford to have an apprenticeship. It's very hard to, even if they work for free, it's very hard. Mm-hmm. And he did a traditional apprenticeship the way that he went through. And I got a little glimpse of one. Like I said, I don't know that mine was an official apprenticeship, but I feel very blessed and lucky that I was offered that opportunity. But we don't have the big, huge Hamleys and Stelzigs in Houston. We don't have those to where you can go in, sweep the floor, make coffee, make strap goods. You're doing all the latigos and the flank cinches, and then you work your way up. But how do we change that? And I don't know the answer to that. I do know I have ideas and I have goals, or, you know, wishes or wants, if you will, of trying to set up some type of micro something that could get a person started, because I know a handful of guys that I've met in these last few years that have gone it alone and done a fantastic job. Yeah. And I feel for them, because that would be so scary to do that. But it's fun. You're building a saddle. It'd be fun. Yeah. But man, there's so much that you don't, somebody just standing there saying, hey, let's do that. Hold on for that right now, because you got to do this first. And if you do it the opposite way, now you've made a mistake. Well, you just learn to move on, but it's slowing you down.
It's disappointing how like a Visalia or a Porter's doesn't exist anymore. You know, it's like, gosh, the amount of history and lessons that could be learned by someone just coming in and doing an apprenticeship, but it's no longer a thing.
And I wish I really do wish there was one like that, because I think that I meet guys people, man. Anytime I say guys, people, ladies, gentlemen, that I want to learn to build saddles. I don't want to do it as a career. Like I'm serious. You know, like they're like, I want to do this. You know, the corporate world is not for me. I would love to do this full time someday. And I'm like, do it, go get it. And they're like, where'd I go? And I'm like, I don't know, just start building stuff. Yeah. And I think Chuck had mentioned that, get enough money, build a saddle, even if you have to go alone, and then sell it. and then get enough money to build another one, and so on and so on and so on, and just keep building. Because what it takes is like welding. When I was taught how to weld, and I'm not a welder, I can make stuff, but it's cowboy welding.
Yeah.
But when I was taught that, it was like burn rod. You have to, here's 50 pounds of rods, get to burning.
Yeah.
That's the only way to learn, because there's only going to be one person under the hood
Yep.
at a time. So when you're building saddles, it's kind of, yes, having input is good, and that's we want to have more people trying to grow that, because it is like, where are these guys supposed to go? And then as I get older, and then one day I, go on, or I retire and I'm not going to build, that's another one gone. So who's going to keep going?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know the answer to that question. I do know there are opportunities, especially with technology and the way we are now, and the opportunities that we have with the different resources. There's a lot easier way to convey information, and it seems there's more of a want to share information versus for a long time, there usually was, it's like, well, you'll have to figure that out. I did, and I respect that.
Yep. I feel like there is such a surgence of people wanting to share
Yes.
knowledge and share their education, which leads me, you share a lot of education and a lot of knowledge on your YouTube channel, which is a awesome channel.
I appreciate it.
Can you tell us, how did you get started, and why did you want to start a YouTube channel and just give away all that information?
I didn't really have a goal when I started that. So I had sold my shop when my daughter was born, because I had been in that building for 10 years. It served me well. I liked it and everything, but I knew that I didn't want to be in that building another 10 years. Didn't know where I was going. Never planned on leaving Bryan College Station, like I was good. But I knew I didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
And so I thought, put it on the market. If it sells, it sells. A full year, nobody looked at it, and then somebody bought it. So I moved into a rented location, and that's what all the early YouTube videos were in. Stud exposed walls. There wasn't any, it was just looked like a hole in the wall, right?
Yeah.
Me and Freddie. That's the only two, because I had some key people move too, that moved on to bigger and better opportunities. And so anyway, we did that. And it was just me and Freddie in there doing repair, building my list, building my saddle list. And I kind of got bored, honestly. And I was like, hey, I always enjoyed teaching the guys that work for me. I had college kids in there come in the shop, work part-time, whatever. A couple of them have their own shops now doing custom work, So I enjoyed that aspect, but they were on my payroll. So I had to teach them kind of quick, right? Hey, man, you got to make money too, so we got to learn tools fast. And so I just did, I think the first video I ever did was a coaster tool and a feather on it. I was into feathers there for a while. I was doing a lot of feathers on things. And I did that video and put it on, started a YouTube channel, put it on there, and started getting views and stuff. So that's cool. So I started doing little tip videos at that building just for fun. I felt like, I don't know why, I just felt like I needed to, I can do a video on this and help you out. Because we always had people either come in the shop when we were out on the big highway, or call like, hey, I'm having trouble with my antique. I make wallets and stuff, and I'd help them on the phone. I thought, why don't I just do a video? And I just say, hey, go look at this. And so that kind of kept going. And then I kind of remembered something about 5 years into this. When I got that first saddle done with Jimmy Plant, we got it done, and I said, I want to pay you for helping me. And he said, you don't have to pay me. All I ask is that you teach somebody else.
I love it.
And so I don't know.
Love it.
I never thought about that. So I'm telling you, it was about 5 years into doing what I do now with DG Leathercraft. I just was, hey, that video hit. Well, do another one. It was fun. I was learning editing. You're an editor. You're a person, a tech guy. It was just interesting to me, learning all that. So I was just doing that. And I don't think we sold our first pattern until, I guess we had maybe a few little digital patterns on our website and stuff. It was just kind of fun. But I enjoyed making the videos, and I enjoyed conveying the information. And so that was fun. But yeah, 5 years in, I finally realized, I was like, I remember that. Because I remember standing there in the shop, and he said, you don't owe me nothing. And I tried, I was trying to pay him. I didn't have any money. I'm glad he said no. But I was like, and I remember him saying, just someday teach somebody else. And so I'm not saying that to say that's why we started the channel. I'm saying I didn't realize that's what I was doing. And I don't know that that's why I'm doing it. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it was just kind of a cool little anecdote. I was like, hey, that's kind of neat,
Hey everyone, the newest sponsor for the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show is Milwaukee Steel Rule Dies. They specialize in manufacturing your leather designs into dies for your clicker machine. They have state-of-the-art equipment that will help you level up your leathercraft products and production with clean-cut leather every single time. Family operated and owned, proudly made in Wisconsin. Contact Milwaukee Steel Rule Dies for all of your leather die solutions. You have a bunch of really cool little videos. You have your Monday morning briefing where you talk to the audience. You just kind of like let everybody know what's going on in the shop and what events you're going. I enjoy those ones because it's always like, that is interesting. And you'll randomly talk about this cool new thing that you found or you discovered. And
Some
it's
random
like,
tool.
Yeah, random tool, random thing. It's like, hey, I love those videos because it's almost like we get to connect with you a little bit. But like many people have never met you and they're just kind of like, oh, Don just released that Monday morning briefing video.
Right.
And then you have your long form content of like, hey, this is how we make a roper bag.
Right.
And it's like, holy smokes. Like I could sit and watch this for an hour and learn how to do it and why to do certain things the way that how you build your bags.
Sure.
And I find that just awesome. And it's such a good way. And I'm sure many people have probably built roper bags. And I'm sure you probably get messages saying like, look at my roper bag that I made off your video.
Yeah.
So I find that
that's the funnest part about it is because everybody has a way of doing stuff. And that's why I always tried to, in my videos, say, this is how I do it. And it's really cool because sometimes I'll get an email from somebody and they'll say, look, I saw you do this one step, but have you ever thought about doing this or that or using this tool or whatever it might be? And I'm like, no, I haven't because I don't know everything. You know what I mean? Like this is just how I was taught to do it or how I figured out how to do it along the way, right?
Yeah.
And it's like I'll go in the shop and try it, and 9 times out of 10, it's a better way than what I was doing. So this like I want to go back and do the video again.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody's got a way of doing something.
So you've been to now all 3 trade shows from the Leather Crafters Journal here in America. You've been to Prescott this year, Sheridan, and Waco now. So now you've experienced 1 full year of 3, knock them out. You teach a lot of classes at those shows.
Yes, sir.
What do you teach, and is there any intention of changing out courses and doing different things?
Yeah, we started out like that. I think the first year I taught at one of those, I had already taught at Maker's Leather Supply with Aaron. He was actually the first one that taught me into teaching a class. I had got to know Aaron early on, and of course we hit it off. Aaron's a great dude, and he has a passion for leathercraft, which I really admire. That's because we all love it, but I mean I think he really, really loves it. I mean he's always building something, going on a different direction, and bags and jackets and but he was like, why don't you come teach a class? And I was like, I don't know what to teach. He said, just come teach a drawing class or come teach a tooling class. So anyway, we kind of went there, and then I did one with Jim Linnell at his studio, beautiful studio by the way. And so when I went to Waco, I was like, well, I'm going to do the first show I went to was Waco. I think the first year they had it, and I think I taught at that show, and I did a drawing class and a tooling class, and they were it was a very good. I got good feedback, and I got some other feedback that helped me to learn because I didn't know. I mean, if you do something for 20 years, it seems easy. So it's very easy for me, and I have to watch that in my videos. It's very easy to be, well, just do like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, holding an edger, I'm trying to teach my kids how to use an edger. Holding the edger at the right angle and pushing it with the right pressure is a lot harder than you think because you've never used this tool for any other reason than edging leather.
Agreed, 100%.
So over the years, I've had a focus on tooling because I love to tool. That's my passion as far as leatherwork goes, is the floral carving. And so I focused on that, and so we did drawing and tooling and things like that. And that's what we've done for, I guess, 2 or 3 years that we've been doing the shows. And then this year I'm changing it up, and I've added a project class because it's fun to tool. And I mean, and you got to learn to walk before you ride about, or run. You got to figure it all out. But I thought, wouldn't it be fun just to go ahead and do a tooled piece that is actually a project? So we can touch on those. So we did that this year in Waco. For the first time, I did a guitar strap class. And it was great. I was the only one that didn't finish his guitar strap. So everybody pretty much got them done. But it was something we could work on tooling. It's flat strap work. There's no hardware. But we got to dive into edges and do some sewing, lining, talked about glue. There's a lot of other aspects you can kind of work into there, but it's still a one-day deal. You got to tool something, but you also have a functional piece when you're done that you can do something with. So that's kind of what I'm thinking my focus is going to be going forward, is trying to design classes to where it's not just, and nothing against a square panel. I've been doing that forever, and I still do that when I'm working out the composition of a certain style. But when you're done, that panel, what do you do with it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, you put a lot of work in there. If it's a full day, we put 10 hours in that thing. I'd like for you to be able to make it something. And some people have. They've turned them into some kind of notebook or something.
Yeah.
But that's what we're kind of focused on, is just so your time, I want to add as much value as I can if you take a class with us.
Yeah. what is the big long-term goal for DG Salary? And like, where do you see that going?
DG Salary has changed a lot since I first started in 2004. So started out first 10 years just a normal saddle shop. And I mean that with all respect. You know, we did repair. We did some retail stuff. We sold some consignment saddles, used saddles. We did free fittings. If people bring a horse up there, we'd help them out with their saddles, mine or theirs, what it didn't matter. Now, over the years since DG Leathercraft has kind of come about, that has pretty well taken over our shop. And so now it's kind of transitioned to where that is the main focus, is growing that aspect of the company and adding more and more resources and things that are going to help a craftsman get where they want to get, whether it's to be, I just want to make items and give them away, or I want to start a full business. We want to try to help offer as much value as we can in those aspects as we grow and learn how to do that. Yeah. And so we're slowly adding different pieces, and you know, pattern packs are obviously our biggest thing that we do, as far as that's the main way we monetize our company. As far as YouTube videos and things like that, is, you know, if you want to support us, you know, hopefully this pattern will help support you, and you can make some money off making these items. And, you know, the information, my kind of internal motto is the information was given to me, so it's free. Yeah. But my time, my artwork is what I charge for.
Gotcha. So, yeah, that makes complete, total sense. So let's talk about my favorite question. It is, I'm such a tool guy and I love looking at machines and everything. What is your favorite tool and machine that you like using in your shop?
Well, this may not be everybody's or surprise anything, but my favorite tool is my swivel knife. Okay. I can do, and I've been really focused. As you learn to teach, you learn more about yourself than you do anything else, right? My dad always said, if you can't teach somebody how to do something, you don't really understand how to do it. I think there's some caveats to that, right? But if you're trying to teach somebody something, you have to break it down at such a level that they understand what's happening. And that's what I've learned over the last 3 or 4 years, how to break that down. But I've told people on the swivel knife, if you can focus and learn the swivel knife, that changing that and getting them as proficient as possible with that will revolutionize your tooling. You're going to get lots of practice beveling. You can make your beveling better. But if you're beveling a line that's not carved correctly, it's not going to fix it. It's still wrong. Yep. So that's why my preference is my swivel knife is the most handiest knife for me when it comes to artwork, and that's my main focus on a lot of stuff.
What size blade do you use? And do you use a hollow?
I use Barry's blade. It's a slim blade, and I think it's a 3/8.
3/8. Okay.
I use a straight. I don't use the angled blades. There's nothing wrong with them, but like I tell people, they're very fast. Yeah. So if you're trying to cut a long flowing line. It's like back in a boat trailer versus a 40-foot stock trailer. If you make a little wiggle, it's going to make a mistake. Okay. Versus if it's longer or at least straight, you have a lot more control with that blade. Plus, you have 2 cutting surfaces. And
what about machine? What machine do you love using in your shop the most?
Right now, it's the MP4 Skyver.
Yeah.
That's my new favorite machine. And I don't even use it all the time because I don't build a lot of bags. That's mainly Claudia's gig. Like that was that's her machine. But it's funny because I'll be in here working on something that I have for years done with a safety skiver or with I have the blades that you can skive with and stuff. And
I feel like because you recently got that, and I feel like it just blew your mind.
Oh, I did.
Because you're like, I wasted all this time.
Yes.
And now it's like, what?
But not even time, not even just time, but also accuracy. Especially if you're building a bag or even casework. If you can set that gauge to the depth of the bevel that you want to make with that MP4 or the skive, you can run that, and now you have a visual guide, as far as like where that seam's going to be. Like building the rope bag, I want to do another rope bag and do an updated video because when I did that, I didn't have that. And so when you do a rope bag and use that MP4 for your gusset, it really changes the angle the way that gusset lays in there. It's just one of the handiest tools I've had, and I put off buying one for years. Thought we don't need that.
And now look at that.
I'm trying to find excuses to use it. That's just me.
And now it's become so important in your shop.
Yeah, I won't not have one again. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap this up. Let's talk about, if you want to, I know everyone can probably find you on YouTube or find you on Instagram, but let's give the audience your contact information so that they can look you up or send you an email.
The easiest way is to go to dgsaddlery.com. It's just in Don Gonzalez Saddlery.com, dgsaddlery.com. And you can pretty much find out everything we're doing right there. The podcast is on there that we do for Lost Trade, and our academy is on there. That we're, like I said, a lot of these are just pieces, and we're just trying to cultivate them and grow them.
Yep.
So right now our academy only has 2 courses, but it is on there. And we're hoping to add more to that as the time progresses here. But then our store is there as well. And then YouTube videos are embedded. There's a blog with tons of articles, tons of free information on both the YouTube channel and our website.
There's a lot of stuff to look at.
Yes.
A lot of content to absorb and intake. Gosh, Don, you're killing it. You're killing it on the virtual web right now. I watch everything that you put out, and I'm not even a carver or a tooler, but I watch all those videos because it fascinates me.
Well,
I'm
I
always
appreciate that.
I'm like, oh man, and I just listen to the things, and I'm just absorbing that knowledge, and so I'm like, man, it's good to just watch something and put yourself in that like weird situation,
right?
And that's what I'm doing when I watch a lot of your videos because I do different stuff than you do,
right?
And I appreciate watching your content.
That's one of our favorite things when we get somebody that says, I don't tool anything.
Yeah.
But I like this project.
Yep.
And I want to try to make it out of exotics or, whatever it might be, the project we're building.
Yeah.
And it's just neat because you're having that cross, interaction between guys that do, like my buddy Odin says, uptown leather, and then the guys that floral carve. And then within that, you have the Sheridan and the Northwestern. Everybody's kind of commingled. And it's fun to see those crossovers.
Yeah.
And man, I appreciate you watching them. Like I said, we just enjoy making them. We're having a lot of fun and hopefully keep growing it. And my videos aren't as polished as yours are, but the information's there, and hopefully that reads through.
It absolutely does. So, Don, thank you so much for being our very first guest on season 2. We have a huge lineup this season. So, thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing me to come into your shop. It is beautiful.
Absolutely.
You have a lot of space. You have a wonderful leather cutting room, and I've never seen a leather cutting room so big before with so much Herman oak leather. Oh my God, it's a lot.
You trip over it back there, but
yeah.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, man. I really do, and I love what you're doing with the podcast. I watch every one when it comes out.
Thank you.
I really, truly do. You're doing a fantastic job and a real asset to the community. So keep it up.
Thank you, Don.
Yep.
All right, you guys, thank you for watching the very first episode of Leathercraft Community Podcast Show, Season 2. Take care, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.